Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your presence because decolonization is a tough topic, and we are going to have some potentially uncomfortable conversations. And for those of you who are already doing the work, I thank you for your commitment to DEI and justice. And I'm really grateful for every one of you here. So let me share my screen. Can you see my slide deck? Yes? Okay, perfect. So I am gonna skip most part of the slide and just focus on the first hat that I wear. I'm the founder and executive director of Rise Travel Institute. We are a 501(c)(3) nonprofit with a mission to create a more just and equitable world through travel education. And I'll share more about our work towards the very end and share some of the exciting work that we have been currently working on. So one thing that I did not include in my bio, for those who don't know me, is that I'm originally from Hong Kong. Has anyone been to Hong Kong? Yay!
Yes,
Did
I
you like?
have.
Yes, did you like it there? I mean, like this, what kind of question is that? Like you're kind of forced to say yes, right? Anyways, for those who have plans to visit Hong Kong in the near future, feel free to reach out, for restaurant recommendations, for suggestions for ways to connect with the locals, and so on. So the relevance of this is that I'm a citizen of the United States and Hong Kong. And here in this country, I'm an immigrant settler, and I'm also a member of the Hong Kong diaspora who were born in the colonial British Hong Kong, which is now under the Chinese rule. So as a Hong Konger, like American, the topic of decolonization is really close to my heart. And as a world traveler, I'm also part of this global tourism machinery that is deeply rooted in and perpetuates a system that is imperial, colonial, extractive, and oppressive in nature. So I can't wait to delve into this topic with you. In the next 40 minutes or so, I hope to be able to cover most of the content that I prepared. So let's jump in. So in this presentation, we're going to take a critical look at mainstream travel narratives to see why many of them are problematic. We'll then unpack what decolonization means, and especially in the context of travel. We'll then explore how to decolonize our storytelling. It's not just about the choice of words, but there's so much more to that. And we're going to go through a list of things that you may want to consider if you want to take a decolonial approach to your travel writing. And then the session will conclude with some tools and resources that you can find at Rise Travel Institute to guide you on this journey. And so, first of all, about the space that we're going to share today, this session may bring up some discomfort because we'll be reflecting upon and confronting the way we've always done things, which may seem harmless to us. And we may now know that some of those things we do say or write about, or the way we write about things could actually be harmful to historically marginalized communities. So I challenge you to be prepared for that discomfort that may show up at times during and beyond this session. And when we do this work, accept that things will evolve. The fact that it was acceptable to behave in a certain way or use a certain term 10 years ago simply because we didn't know better doesn't mean that it's acceptable now. So, for example, the term master bedroom was thought to be neutral in the past, but now we understand that it carried colonial undertones, like, related to slavery. And so what do? Well, would we could stop using that term and just call it the primary bedroom. And so let's be open to evolve as an individual and as a company or an organization or a brand. There are terms that we at Rise used to use in 2020. It was not that long ago. And now we've retired those terms because we now know that they uphold imperialist structures. Decolonizing, Decolonization is a journey. It's never too late to embark on this journey if you haven't started yet. For those of us who have been doing the work, we're not perfect either. I definitely do not call myself an expert. And there are many of you in the audience that who are travel writers, who I can learn from. And I believe that we still have a lot to learn together and unlearn together as we go. And understand that we will make mistakes and continue to make mistakes. And when we do, own our mistakes and learn to be a better person, company, or organization, because mistakes are actually super valuable on any learning journey if we reflect upon them, as they will inform us on how we can improve. And decolonization requires systems thinking and critical thinking, especially in the tourism context. When we travel, there are a lot of things that we don't see or don't pay attention to, or if we don't seek to understand the context. We, the travelers, bring along our own preconceived notions about places, and our biases, conscious or unconscious, may mask the way we receive and interpret information in a foreign place. So in this session, I really invite you to practice digging deeper beyond that beautiful colonial building that you see, that delectable dish that you taste, or that white sandy beach that you sip your cocktail on, and really think more deeply with a justice lens. So let's our journey begin. First of all, I'd like to start with an exercise or like an activity. Look at the image. I want you to take a moment to imagine how you would feel to be there as a travel writer. What are some words and expressions that you would use to describe this place? And how would a travel magazine write about it? Would anyone like to share a few words few words or descriptions that you'll often see in travel magazines that would be like the caption or description of this photo or image? Anyone? I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but like
I
feel
feel
free to
like
unmute
I
and
see a lot of people say like exotic, like they use words
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Um,
yes,
paradise.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
exotic, paradise. A lot of magazines do use these words, right? And anything else anymore? I see some in the yeah, tranquil, peaceful, serenity, idyllic, serene, peaceful. Yeah. Sorry, I was late to check the chat, but sorry, Siri was interrupting. Did you hear Siri? Oh yeah, that's so funny. Okay. Blissful. Yes, blissful. Cool. Now, may I invite someone, a volunteer, to read this quote? Feel free to just like raise your hand, unmute, and anyone? Like there are a few quotes that I would love to invite, so like everyone would have a chance, actually. Carolyn, maybe why don't you go first?
Oh, I can go. I was hoping someone else would jump in.
Yeah.
While this place is indeed beautiful, it is not an exotic postcard or tropical playground with happy hosts. People here struggle with the problems brought about by colonialism, military occupation, tourism, food insecurity, high costs of living, and the effects of a changing climate.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And this is from a book called Detours, and I'll talk a little bit about more about that. Can you guess which place we're actually referring to?
Possibly Sri
Yeah,
Lanka.
Sri
My guess
Lanka.
is Sri Lanka.
Right? Any other guess? Where is this beach located? Anyone? Let's feel free to drop in the chat if you don't want to unmute. Mm.
I don't know.
Anyone?
Thailand, Cambodia.
Thailand, Cambodia,
Um,
Tanzania, Seychelles, Mexico, South America. Actually, it's closer to us. Like for those of you who are in North America, it's actually Hawaii.
really?
Hawaii.
Ah.
Yes. So this book, Akau and Gonzalez, the book is called Detours, a Decolonial Guide to Hawaii. And so it's a guide that talks about that approaches Hawaii from a totally different angle and to share mostly, stories of Hawaii from indigenous people's perspectives, and also present the multiple realities of Hawaii. So Hawaii is not just, an exotic place for tourists. It has a lot of other realities too, like people's struggles, like resilience, stories of resilience, and so on. And so when we try to write about a place, what kind of narrative are we perpetuating? And so this is Caribbeans, yeah. So this is a very generic, it could be a generic description of any of the places that you named, right? But again, the point is, it's not the places we write about or that we visit is not just how they are through the tourist gaze. There are so many more realities to that. And so the next slide is a screenshot of a Google search that I performed. Like I just typed Hawaiian beach, and this is all that you can find in the search result. And what is one common thing that you can see in these pictures or images?
They pretty
Very
much like all look the same.
Right?
Very few very few people. Almost.
Very
I
few,
don't,
almost like, yes, like idyllic, deserted, like there are almost no people. Where are the locals? People live there, right? Where are the locals? No locals are represented. Like they're, it's just, oh, beautiful scenery, right? And this is how Hawaii is typically represented in travel and tourism. And then it is a completely sanitized version of Hawaii. Where are the locals? What are the other realities of Hawaii? Are all beaches accessible to the locals? How many native Hawaiians still live in Hawaii? How many immigrants have parents who worked in plantations? And what are their stories? Is there a housing crisis there? And how is that related to tourism and foreign investments? Where do homeless people go? And what about the kids? Do they all learn Olelo Hawaii, which is the native language in school, including the immigrant children? So there are a lot to a place, a lot of realities about a place. And if we only portray a place through our writing or our photographs from a traveler's perspective, we risk to perpetuate the fantasy of Hawaii being a tropical paradise, an exotic paradise, which is other people's homes, essentially, and fuel your readers' unrealistic expectations and entitlement. Here's another quote. I would love for someone else to read it because I don't want to be the only person to speak. If anyone
I can
would
read
like to
it.
jump in. Yes, please.
Okay, the constant eroticization of tropical destinations alludes to the conquest of virgin land, while their emptiness insinuates that no one is around to mind. When tourists frame their Instagram shots to demonstrate emptiness and indicate eroticism, their performances reinscribe colonial-era assumptions about the occupation of tropical land as a prerogative of the colonizers. The illusion of local identity through a historicizing. Oh my gosh.
I know, right?
Portrayals of the destination contributes to the erasure of any other's right to inhabit the space and privileges the tourist's desire to indulge in their tropical island fantasy.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there are a lot of, in this quote, there are some key notions, very powerful words here: eroticization, ahistoricization, and the erasure of a people's history, the erasure of a people's right to inhabit the space. Has anyone ever, I mean, I'm asking this because I just saw what Carolyn just said. Has anyone ever moved your camera to make sure that some people or buildings or trash are outside of the frame to get a clean picture? I mean, I certainly am guilty of doing that because I wanted to reproduce something close to what we usually see in the media, like, um, like paradise or exotic place. And we want to make sure that no one is in our picture. And that's exactly what this quote is trying to tell us, that, we've been doing it wrong this whole time. One more quote, and then we'll move on to like some concrete things about the decolonial theory and also how to decolonize our travel writing. Can someone please? Would someone like to? There are less tricky words in this quote.
I can try to do it.
Thank you so much.
Travel writers lie when they center themselves in the story of a place, knowing full well that as outsiders, they can count on employing a few tidbits readers will associate with the location and sprinkle in some musings about whatever they're wrestling with in their lives. Suddenly, without much work at all, the average white American is reading an exoticized version of a place they've never visited. Travel writers lie to themselves and their readers when they front like visiting a place makes them authorities on it, because the average white American doesn't know many people from that place, but does have a few friends who went there once. They lie when they add a touch of self-deprecation to their stories, because humility seems smart in hindsight, and because all those people who witnessed them being annoying tourists are still in that place far away and can't attest that these tourists haven't learned shit.
This this quote is definitely a little harsh, but what I'm trying to say is that Bania Moore, who is a queer Ecuadorian travel writer, photographer, and activist based in New York City, she writes extensively on the intersection of race, place, power, and travel culture. So I figured that it would be worthy to still kind of put her on your them on your radar, sorry, to make sure that if you're interested, you could check out some of her their publications. She again, I know it's like this is the thing that we all need to practice to decolonize, like when we use pronouns and respecting people's identities too. So they have published in major media outlets and are regarded as an expert in decolonization. So I just wanted to include this quote here for us to, think about. So essentially, Bania Moore is referring to the lack of sense of responsibility we have to a place as a visitor. It's very easy nowadays to take a picture of a place and to give ourselves the permission to share with the entire world at a click of a button, about how we feel about the place after being there for like 2 days or 2 hours, not knowing 95% of what's going on in that place and the local culture and how the locals live. Our content will then influence our readers and the way they imagine and perceive the place, just as how many mainstream travel resources readily available to us influence the way we think about places. So let's take a more critical look or closer look at mainstream travel resources out there. So of course we have like commercial travel guides like Lonely Planet, Rough Guides, and so on for those travel. And then the travel section of traditional media, printed travel magazines. We have travel blogs like The Nomadic Mad, The Blonde Abroad, Never Ending Footsteps, social media. Everyone is a travel writer nowadays. With Instagram, vlogs, TikTok, YouTube, and podcasts, and so on. And then you also have promotional materials by DMCs, destination marketing companies or organizations. For example, Amazing Thailand, Discover Hong Kong, Welcome to Saudi Arabia, and so on. And we also have booking platforms or like online travel agencies with user-generated content or reviews. TripAdvisor is one of them, right? And so everyone nowadays can be a storyteller, but not many people would actually think about their responsibility to places they write about. And also, if you have to identify one thing in common, these travel guides or resources have, especially the commercial ones. Some of them are really good. There are really good ones, and they are more critical, inclusive, and like informative in nature. However, the majority of these travel resources out there are written or created predominantly by Western travelers or influencers, and many of them are white men to begin with. And so this landscape with all of you here, JourneyWoman community, this landscape is fortunately changing now as there are more and more women and women of color empowered to travel and to share their travel experiences with others. However, one thing for sure is that very few of these guides or resources are actually written by locals of the places or that are being described or represented, and they're mostly written from the traveler's gaze or the traveler's perspective. So this is something to keep in mind. Why are many of these narratives problematic? Well, first of all, white colonial narrative, travel guides are intrinsically or historically colonial. If you look at the history of travel guides, some of the oldest travel books or maps dated back to the 15th century or the 16th century. In other words, these ancestors of modern day travel guides trace their roots to the age of discovery or the era of imperialism and colonialism, where travel or voyage was motivated by political, economic, and religious agenda. Fast forward to look at modern day travel guides, predominantly written by white male travel writers at the beginning. Again, as I said, like at the very beginning, white men were more empowered to travel on their own, and therefore, like, got into the profession. White travel writers have privilege that non-white travel writers don't, and certainly white travel writers have the privilege to, you know, that the locals don't, and therefore easier for them to overlook some historical complexities of place. So I love to use this example. If you see the top left corner, the image in the top left corner, picture perfect colonial architecture, is often highlighted in these guides without much information about the historical oppression or events associated with these sites. So here's the perfect example. Most guides would tell you to go to Antigua in Guatemala as a UNESCO heritage site for its colonial charm, right? But very few would mention how the Mayans and other indigenous people got killed, displaced, enslaved, and to this date still marginalized. Stereotypes and misrepresentations and myths of and about places continue to be perpetuated by travel writers who are actually just tourists themselves and don't know the places they write about very well. And then single narrative. Another problem with this kind of travel guides is the danger of a single story. Oftentimes they're based on a single travel writer's own subjective observations, personal experiences, and superficial understanding of places and people. And then you have recommendations and ratings of places and activities that could be biased on personal liking and white privilege, and could be more biased if they're on, paid experience. So that is the single narrative. We, of course, will talk about like how to rectify, how to improve that. Institutionalized narrative. Well, this one is more specific about destination management or destination marketing organizations, about their promotional materials, usually pretty sanitized, right? Because they want to promote the best things about the destinations, and of course, like, understandably, things will be a little sanitized. So you're not going to find much information about the current political struggle of the local population who are enduring behind all the glamorous place branding, like Hong Kong, Asia's world city. Like, look at what has been happening over there in the past 3 years or so. And also there's a lot of greenwashing and peace washing and sports washing behind all these slogans and brand identity, right? And so don't want to call out like DMCs, but when you look at Saudi Arabia, for example, trying to brand themselves as a sustainable destination, and while in reality they're like pretty far from that. And so we need to really look beyond what is presented to us as a consumer. And when we are a travel writer, when we are in the role of a travel writer, really making sure that we're not just presenting a sanitized version of a destination. And then there's the bucket list mentality, right? And other pretty problematic, or let's say another mainstream thing to do for travel guides or magazines is that they love to promote the bucket list mentality, which is the opposite of what sustainable and regenerative travel encourages. Articles like the 10 must sees before you die, or like what can you see within 48 hours in New York, or top 5 Instagrammable spots. We're encouraging people to contribute to over tourism, to gentrification, and the loss of authenticity. Um, so the bucket list mentality, I know that again, I am guilty of that. I still have a map like where I put push pins. I was just telling Carolyn before the webinar, that was a map that I bought like 15 years ago, and I just wanted to have a little bit of recording or documenting where I've been, not knowing back in the days that, well, just this action of like putting a push pin on on a map is pretty colonial in nature. It's like, oh, I want to go there. I want to go there. Yeah. And then exoticization or eroticization, we talked all about that in the previous quotes. So I just want to jump to the last one, accuracy. And this one, I'm dying to share this one with you all. Because the guides are written by travel writers who are foreign to places they travel to, the accuracy of information they present largely depends on how much research and fact checking they and their editors have done. So some of them do a really good job. I, however, stumbled upon an online guide on Hong Kong written by a white woman in the language section, and she put "ni hao" for hello, and that's not even how we greet in the local language, which is Cantonese in Hong Kong. And I was pretty shocked. And it's like, do your research before you write, right? And then in other instance, I read a travel writer saying that Cantonese is a dying language. I'm sorry, there are 85.5 million Cantonese speakers on this planet. The language is definitely threatened politically, but it's not dying, it's thriving. So the fact that we don't hear people talk about it is because it's politically marginalized. So many travel writers give themselves the permission to make uninformed comments about a place and spread misinformation, and people who read their writing and don't fact check would believe in what they write, and the cycle repeats. And I'm 200% certain that you don't fall into that category. But I'm just saying that there are a lot of information out there, a lot of people who are trying to write about places out there who don't fact check, and they're doing the destinations that they're describing a huge disservice. So I'm gonna just I don't want to make this webinar super theoretical or like academic or boring. So I would leave you to kind of read this after the webinar. But essentially, the decolonial theory is just like a framework to question the Eurocentric perspectives that have been dominating in knowledge production and like all sorts of disciplines, and not just confining to the travel context. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our decolonial guide to travel in a bit. But what does it mean to decolonize travel? So to decolonize travel is, first of all, as a traveler or as a travel writer, ditch that entitlement mindset, knowing that we are visiting a place as a visitor, as a guest, recognizing the colonial and neo-colonial nature of global mass tourism and the power imbalances between visitors and hosts. Be aware of how tourism historically and continuously impacts the locals, especially the marginalized communities. acknowledging the history of oppression of Black, Brown, and Asian and Indigenous peoples who are dispossessed, exploited, tortured, or killed in places where we eat, where we sleep, or where we sightsee at our destinations. Letting the locals or Indigenous peoples decide how they want tourism to be done in their homes. Supporting historically marginalized communities when we travel and tell the stories of the oppressed and protect them from erasure. So this is a decolonial approach to travel. And when it comes to travel writing, how do we decolonize our travel writing more specifically? So just now we talked a little bit about these words, right? And we know that, yeah, like some of the words we don't feel comfortable using them now, but we don't exactly know how to explain to people. Well, here, I'll give you some examples. Conquer, explore, discover, they carry colonial undertones, right? Because that's the language when we talked about the age of discovery, like the Crusades, like how when they conquer like Newfoundland and so these are the terms that we used to talk about or use in the colonial context. So I would say that not saying that you should never use them, but I would try to, I mean, I personally have retired all these words unless they are used in different contexts, like, let's explore this topic, or like, yeah, let's, discover, um, well, discover the, I don't know, the nuances of a certain topic, like, not talking about discovering places. So, and then colonial charm, colonial, the word itself is very oppressive. So, like, when you put colonial charm together, it's almost like an oxymoron, right? Um, and then words like exotic. Um, when a while a place may be exotic to us just because it's different from our culture, it's not exotic for the people who live there, right? And so to describe a place as exotic, we're othering. And also, we're not understanding that there are people who live in the place we visit. Well, authenticity is, I mean, I'm not saying that you should not use this word, but you have to be intentional about what it means. Because what is authentic essentially? Like when you go to Panama, I just came back from Panama, for example. What is authentic food from Panama? Panama is such a diverse country. Like, you have indigenous people, you have Afro Latinos who are like, uh, you know, who have like ancestors who got there because of slavery and who now are calling Panama home, right? And so they are the locals, and they even within the category of local, there are many different ethnicities, there are many different flavors of food, and so what is authentic? It's very hard to define. So if you are saying that like I want to go to New York City and I want a pizza, like, that is authentic. But well, New York City is essentially is a city that is made of immigrants. And so there are a lot of different things that are like, that contribute to the fabric of the city, which also should be considered as local and authentic. Countryside untouched, pristine beach paradise. I'll have to let you know that I just came back also like from a work trip to Hawaii, and the executive director or president of the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association, Malia Sanders. I had a wonderful conversation with her, and she said that, well, we Hawaiians, we hate we hate people call us paradise, because it's not like, they definitely have a lot of things that they're proud of, natural scenery, everything that they should be proud of. But then there are also other realities as well. So to just flatten a place and call it a paradise, you're really ignoring a lot of, struggles of the people who live there. Countryside untouched, again, people live there. It's the place we go to belongs to someone else. Bucket list, we talked about that. Oh, now colonial place names. I wonder how many of you spell Hawaii with the diacritic mark? I didn't do that before, but now I've started to do that because that's the way Hawaiian people call themselves and like spell their own place, right? Hawaii with, it's not even an apostrophe. It's a diacritic mark called Okina, but which is very specific, but now it's acceptable to use an apostrophe. It should look more like the upside down one, but at least like spell that with an apostrophe to show that you understand that that's the way how local people or Native Hawaiian people spell the name of their own country, or the name of their own place. So Hawaii, Kiev, like Myanmar instead of Burma, Turkey, Mumbai instead of Bombay, and so on. So like really learn, like I used to call Myanmar Burma in the past, and then wait, why do I still use the colonial name to call this country while they have moved on, right? And so I think a little bit of research and knowledge and understanding and respect goes a long way. And then the word destination, it's very controversial, I know. Like rise is I think like for rise, we try not to use this word because destination, when we look at a place as destination, we're essentially objectifying or like commodifying a place for tourist consumption, right? Like, this is a tourism destination. Well, this is a country, this is a place, this is a city where people call home, people live there. So I at Rise, we want to move away from using that word while acknowledging that this word has been embraced by the entire world and not just the industry. So we understand that like it's totally okay to continue using that, but we have the awareness that when you say the word destination, we are talking about a place in the tourism industry context. And when you talk about industry, we're commodifying a place where people call home. So again, back to this, it's really up to you, like your level of comfort, whether you want to continue to use a word, a certain word or not. But like just being more mindful about what are the implications of like using certain words that could be harmful. So in addition to words, word choice, what narratives are we creating is also important, right? Whose perspective is the story told from? What biases do we have, or does the storyteller have? Whose narrative or perspective is not represented in your writing? What is the depth of the story? And which part of history or current social justice issues are being downplayed or partially omitted or completely erased? So I would love to invite you to not just like, think about all these things when you write as a travel writer, but also like when you're presented with materials or story, like really try to look for whether the local voices are represented and like whether, like what kind of story or history or what part of history is presented to you and what is absent in the story. So to sum up, a decolonial approach to travel writing means retire colonial words or like words with colonial undertones. Use descriptive language as possible. Like, so this is suggested by Joanna Hogan, one of our guest instructors, who's also the founder of Rooted Storytelling. And so what she meant is sometimes, simple is best. If we inject adjectives with too many emotions, then things would become overly subjective. Avoid stereotyping a place. avoid flattening realities. Places and multiple realities, you know, places have multiple realities, and don't be afraid to incorporate nuances and complexities. We don't always have to only talk about the best things. We don't we are afraid to like defame a certain place, but what we need to do is to like present the reality and provide the context for people to understand more. Understand your own intersectional identity, positionality, and relationality. As an Asian immigrant settler, I have very different experiences and challenges than Black Americans or white Americans in this country, and how our intersectional identity plays out as we move across the world can be very different as well. So, understanding that we can be the oppressed in some situations or the ones who uphold systems of oppression at the same time could be helpful in understanding power dynamics. Invite local voices, please, into your storytelling. Interview someone, connect with a local, tell their stories. It's not just always about you, right? I mean, I understand that you want to write about your own travel experience, but bring more voices into your writing, um, and let people see the place through the lens of the locals. Empathy. Our travels means something to ourselves, right? Travel writing can be extremely personal, as I said, but and that's okay. But remember that everything you share with the world will have an impact on the people and places that you write about. So remember, it's not just about you. And then don't forget to empower and educate your readers, because your audience may be travelers, right? And so you may want to encourage people to travel to places you've been that you love. You may be a marketer, and so attracting people to go places that you write about is your job. But don't forget that you have the power to educate. Are you enabling travelers their sense of entitlement? Are you centering their experiences at the expense of the locals, or are you inviting your readers to center the well-being of the host communities and respect diverse cultures so that they too will have an enriching and meaningful experience? So like we're close to the very end of this presentation. Remember, we're guests. Colonialism is the ultimate breach of guest protocol. It violates a welcome one that was never actually extended in order to fulfill a desire to take or possess land that is not one's own. So this is from the book Detours, A Colonial Guide to Hawaii, which I highly recommend if you have not read it yet. And the authors, they are right now working on a decolonial guide series, and the second one would be on Israel and Palestine, I believe, which would be very timely if they publish in the near future. And then they have I think they have the series on, I don't know, Singapore. They will have volumes on Singapore, Thailand, and other places as well. Yeah, I'm going to skip this quote, but here's an activity that I would love to invite all of you to do after this webinar. That is to revisit your past writing. Take a look at your past publications and see whether you identified any, like, I don't know, any words, expressions that you used that you wouldn't use now, or like any ways that you approach writing about a destination or a place that you would do it differently. So like just revisit your past writing and see whether you can make use of some insights that you get from this webinar to kind of do differently. Benefits of decolonized literature. Conscious travelers nowadays, they're tired of cliches. Honestly, like, we laughed about pristine, beach paradise. Actually, more and more conscious travelers, they seek information that accurately represents the realities of a place. And also locals have, if, in the decolonized literature, locals will have a say in how they want their place to be represented. And the colonial approach would also help redress power imbalance, focus on featuring sustainable community-run tourism projects, giving them the spotlight, enrich visitors' travel experience, and foster a deeper understanding, empathy, and respect. And so I would love to announce that we're going to publish a resource, a free resource called Pathways to Equity, Rice Travel Institute's Decolonial Guide to Travel for the Conscious Traveler. So this is going to be published or released next week, actually. So I would love for you to join our mailing list. Our website is very simple, ricetravelinstitute.org. Get on our mailing list and be the one to receive this guide. We have spent months to work on this, work on putting together this resource to explain what decolonization means and what like how colonialism, coloniality, and tourism are related, and what is the current state of affairs in the tourism industry, and all the power imbalances and how we can all do better. And so there's a big chapter on how to, just really giving you the very practical, advice on what we could do, like what are some alternative ways to approach travel writing or travel just in general, like for example, some some mental or mindset, like some very common travelers mindset is this, and we try to kind of decolonize that and provide alternatives of like what you can do. So this is something that we're super proud of, and we're going to release that in a week. And I'm just gonna like wrap up by saying that our words carry tremendous power, and with great power comes with great responsibility. Travel narratives do not have to be biased. They do not have to be imbalanced, exclusionary, unjust, or harmful. So let's get on this journey and be the ones who change that. And I have included some references here. So, you can, if you're interested in decolonial theory or like, or decolonization of travel in general, feel free to check them out. And I just have one final note about land acknowledgement. I really appreciate that Carolyn started the webinar with a land acknowledgement and always do that, at all of the seminars. I just also really wanted to acknowledge the land that we're on and make sure that we don't do this like in a performative way. And so I would just like invite all of you to take a moment, whenever you have a chance, to recognize the deep and enduring bond between the indigenous peoples and their ancestral lands that now we call home, wherever you are calling in from today. And let us honor their vital role in stewarding the land for generations past, present, and future. And also let us confront the painful truth of historical dispossession and the ongoing oppression and suppression of their voices. Acknowledging injustice is not enough. We must actively work towards advocating for reconciliation, justice, and equity for Indigenous communities. And to be an ally, we must first learn to decolonize ourselves, our thinking, our ways of knowing, and our ways of doing. And so with this conversation today, we'll join those who have been trying to change the narrative of travel and make the travel space more responsible, equitable, and inclusive. So thank you so much for being here today. And I know that I imagine that you may have questions and things to share, then I would love to have a conversation with all of you if time permits. I know that we only have a few minutes left, but yeah, let's start the conversation and you can always reach out to me and have a one-on-one. So yeah, thank you so much. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you,
Thank
Vinci.
you.
I really appreciate you, like for me anyways, challenging us to take it to the next level and um think and be more thoughtful. Because I think we get kind of caught up sometimes in the day to day and pumping stuff out. And I'm so happy my team is on this call because I hope for all of you, it will help, we all need to do this together, right? And we need to be thinking about the imagery and the headlines and the content of the article. Even after us as travel writers have written something, I am kind of counting on my team to say, whoa, hang on a second. And help me become a better writer too, and just call me out when if it's so interesting because we've removed bucket list. We did that last year. We're trying to avoid
Very
some
cool.
of the terminology that's being used, but I can still see we have a long way to go. So I would love to open it up to all of you and Kathy, I see you joined us a little later. Kathy does a lot of work in Bali. And just see if you guys have questions for Vinci while we have her.
I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you. And I'm wondering, I think over tourism is really adding a huge additional problem to this, and which makes it even more so important that you deliver your message and it's received and listened to.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, over tourism and all the things that we have been writing about, or like the way we represent places, it's almost like a cyclical, like a vicious cycle, right? Like the way we portray places kind of fuel people to flock to those places, and then over tourism it means a lot of people going to those places, and anyone will be writing about those places, and like without much thinking about their responsibility. And so yeah, it is a huge problem. So I really count on you all, as seasoned travel writers and travel professionals to kind of be on this journey and do better, as what Carolyn said. And I really appreciate your sharing about the fact that you retired the expression bucket list last year. I mean, this is exactly what we have been doing at Rise as well. Like there are things that I'm sure that there are things that we're still making mistakes, right? And also now, like today's June 11th, 2024. In our conversation today, I'm pretty sure that there are things like 5 years down the road that we realize are actually problematic. And guess what? Stop saying those things, or stop using those words, right? And so it's a lifelong learning journey for ourselves as a person, as individuals, and for our organizations as well. So I really appreciate your sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to also jump in and thank you very much. I've been a travel writer largely based in India. I'm from Canada, from Toronto, just not far from Carolyn right now. She's just down the road, basically. But I've spent a lot of time in India, and I have spent a lot of time, thinking about these things and wrestling with these issues. Some of what you've presented was known to me, but I have to say that I found it very inspiring, and I love the fact that you emphasized evolving, because I think sometimes people in these spaces can be a bit rigid and harsh, and they don't realize that we're all learning, we're all evolving, and what we think today, in future generations other people may think we were quite ignorant,
Yeah,
even when we're doing our best.
yes.
So I really thank you for you know, I made a lot of notes, like you really inspired me, and I'd never given any thought to the word destination before. So that's not the only way you inspired me, but that was just something I wanted to tell you that, you know, that was a eye opener for me.
Thank
Although
you.
I have been very critical of the rise of influencers who I feel used, you know, destinations as backdrops for their
Mhm.
photo shoots, their fashion
Yeah.
shoots,
Oh
and
my goodness.
reduce
Yes.
and they reduce the local, um, you know, landscape, the local culture, the local community,
Yeah.
everything to just a destination, to just a backdrop. But you really made a connection for me, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you just shared. I look up to travel writers who 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 are mindful and intentional and who have been wrestling with these issues. And you know, it's true that we are not perfect and we will never be. And so keep learning and evolving and not calling ourselves an expert is a good start. And yeah. I I don't know about you, you folks, but when I don't personally use TikTok, but I know that there's a lot of content created on TikTok and a lot of influencers. Um, what you described as what a lot of influencers do, you know, like taking fashion shots in front of iconic um, spots, right? And having absolutely no connection or having no intention to make any connection with the place that they're visiting. And so we hope that you will take the lead to change that and you know influence people to follow suit. So thank you so much.